My name is Dacia Esquileru, and I am a member of the Baha'i faith. Please watch the CAINE interviews on CAT TV.
Hello, and welcome to the CAINE interviews. I'm Shannon Cain. Today we'll be discussing the Baha'i faith, and with me today are two members of this religion. We have Alan Clark and we have Dacia Esquileru Clark, and we're just going to be talking about this interesting religion. And yes, there are Baha'i practitioners in Northwest Arkansas, and so we're going to learn more about that. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. We're very happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
And my first question is, if you could just tell us when and where the Baha'i faith originated.
Well, sure. The Baha'i faith had its origins in 1844 in the land of Persia, what is today known as Iran. And it happened to coincide, surprisingly, with a period of intense millennial zeal about that time throughout the world.
Okay. And what are the major sacred texts of the Baha'i faith?
Well, you know, it's interesting that Baha'u'llah had revealed the Word of God for a period of about 40 years. And he wrote prolifically. So he wrote more than 100 volumes, out of which a small portion has been translated in English and in other many languages of the world. One of the books is called the Book of Laws. And I would like to, if that's okay, to just read a quick quotation of what Baha'u'llah himself says about the Book of Law. He says, "Think not that we have revealed unto you a mere code of laws. Nay, rather we have unsealed the choice wine with the fingers of might and power." His Book of Laws, Baha'u'llah says, is the weightiest testimony unto all people and the proof of the All-Merciful unto all who are in heaven and all who are on earth. He continues, "So vast is its range that he has encompassed all men before their recognition of it. Ere long will its sovereign power, its pervasive influence, and the greatness of its might be manifested on earth."
Okay, now, you've just given us that nice quote, and now is Baha'u'llah considered the final prophet of the Baha'i faith, or will another follow him?
Well, Baha'u'llah has taught that actually there is not a separation between the messengers of God. Humanity tends to make that separation. But he says that each messenger has been sent from the same God, as if it were chapters in the same book. And Baha'u'llah says that I am part of that cycle, that in the past, the previous messengers of God have all said this is part of the cycle of prophecy, saying one day peace will be established on earth. Baha'u'llah has said that in his cycle, this is the beginning of the cycle of the fulfillment, but that after him there will indeed be another messenger of God. But he was very kind to say, don't start looking for at least 1,000 years. He freed us up from that.
Okay. Okay, well, a question for each of you. Have you been involved with this religion for all of your life, or did you join it at a later point?
Well, I'm kind of unusual. I'm a fourth generation Baha'i. And for Americans, for Persians, for instance, where it came from, that's common. But my great-grandmother and great-aunt actually petitioned the son of Baha'u'llah in 1901 and 1903 to become Baha'is. You had to ask for permission from Abdu'l-Baha in that time. And actually the son of Baha'u'llah, after he was released from prison with the Young Turks Revolution in 1909, came to America and Europe and gave some talks. And at that time he actually visited my great-grandmother's home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have been married for about 10 years to Alan before I became a Baha'i. And I became a Baha'i actually for years. I had said the Baha'i prayers because there are so many of them that relate to all circumstances of life. So whenever there is need for some assistance, I would say some of the prayers. And finally one day I read one of the books of Baha'u'llah called the Book of Certitude, which is a book in which he actually takes some of the quotations from the Bible and the Quran. They have been a subject of not confusion, but of always wondering what is the meaning of that. And I would just give an example, for instance, Christ coming in the clouds, or the subject of return and resurrection. And as reading that book, it was as if, you know, new and new horizons of understanding would open as reading. So that what actually has helped me to, my heart responded to that.
Okay, all right. Now, what are some various religious obligations that Baha'is observe?
Well, all religions have, I think, the same religious obligations in the sense of prayer and fasting. And of course, Baha'is have that, and we're about to begin our period of fasting pretty soon. It starts March 2nd and goes through March 21st, which is our New Year's. And that is from sunrise to sunset. We don't eat or drink anything during that time. But we also have the obligation to observe certain holy days, such as the birth of the Bab, birth of Baha'u'llah, and to attend feasts, which are our, it's like Christians go to church on Sunday. Well, Baha'is have feast once every 19 days. And it's a time to have devotions and prayers, and then we take care of the community business and then socialize with each other in a spirit of, well, actually in a spiritual condition. And to vote for, you know, the assemblies.
Is there any specific reason that it's in a 19-day cycle?
Yes, actually, there's a new calendar in the Baha'i faith. And that was instituted by the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, who was like John the Baptist was to Christ. And he actually instituted a new calendar of 19 months of 19 days each. And for the mathematicians there, who are very quick, there's 4 or 5 days missing. And those are our days called Ayyamiha, and that's our time of gift giving at the end of February. And these months are named after different attributes of God, such as sovereignty or mercy or light. These are the names of our months. And I think for me personally, I look at that and think, okay, I should really be thinking about these qualities during this month.
Okay, all right. Now, if I were to attend a local Baha'i meeting, what would I see? What goes on?
Now, it all depends on what kind of meeting you are attending. Mm-hmm. If, for instance, is the 19-day feast, then again, usually what you would see, what Al has just alluded to, is that the feast is made up actually of 3 parts. The first part is the devotional part, where we would be reading from the sacred writings. Then is the administrative part, where the believers and friends talk about the business of the community. And then lastly is the socializing, because the purpose of the feast is, you know, to tie the hearts together. If you were to come, let's say, for what you would call devotional gatherings, that's when we invite people from all religious backgrounds. They can come and we can share writings from the different sacred books.
Okay, well, that's really interesting.
Yes.
Well, let's go to something a little darker here. It is an unfortunate fact that Baha'is have been seriously persecuted in various parts of the world. Tell us a little bit about this persecution and why it's happening.
Well, the faith was actually born amidst persecutions, almost from its inception. The government rose up against it, and it was aided by a very powerful clergy to try to destroy it. It originated in Iran, which is, of course, Persia, which is a Muslim country. And Muhammad taught that you should be kind and respectful to the people of the book, and you can't persecute them. Well, the people of the book would be Jews and Christians. Anybody after Muhammad was considered a heretic, and therefore worthy of being stamped out. And so in the beginning of the faith, there were tens of thousands of Babis and Baha'is who were killed in the very early days of the faith. And the attempt to stamp out the faith has maintained. But periodically now you'll see maybe 10 people at a time hanged. Sometimes they're women, sometimes they're youth, because they wanted to teach children's classes about the faith. Sometimes you'll find that currently college students are not allowed, if they're Baha'i, to go to college, or they're not allowed to go to high school, or if they somehow miss them and then they subsequently find out they're Baha'is, then they find a way to fail them and excuse them from school. It's a organized attempt to take away any kind of marriage vows. If it's not recognized, then you are living in sin. These kind of things to destroy the very fabric of the Baha'i community. Yeah, it's worse in Iran. There are attempts in Egypt, for instance, which have been reversed of late, I have to say. There have been some court cases where, for instance, the identification cards in which Baha'is were not allowed to say you're a Baha'i. You either have to say you're Muslim or something else. But the lower court has recently reversed that, which is very admirable.
Do you find that a lot of Baha'is do immigrate for these reasons?
I've had several friends, for instance, when we lived in Salt Lake City, Persians who gave me their harrowing stories of how they escaped. Oftentimes, if you can't say I'm a Baha'i on my passport and leaving, and so we're not allowed to say I'm something else. We can't dissimulate. We have to say we're Baha'is. And at the same time, for them to leave, then they have to basically go through, I think it's Afghanistan. Pakistan, yes, excuse me. Oh. And so it's a long walk.
Wow.
Through and with the threat of being captured at any time.
There's some kind of network among Baha'is in more free countries to help people who are caught in these situations?
I do not know if there is. Okay. I imagine that kind of information, if it existed, would not be widely spoken of.
Right. Okay. Who is at the head of the Baha'i faith? In other words, who oversees the religion?
Would you like to answer?
The answer is a little bit more involved in the sense that you have what you, it relates to the question of the covenant. And as most people know, the covenant is an agreement between two parties. And in this particular case, one party is God, who through his eternal covenant says that he will never leave humanity alone and without guidance. And on the other is humanity, who agrees to recognize and to that guidance when it is sent to it in the form of this manifestation of God, and to follow the teachings. Well, with the Baha'i faith, for the first time in the history of religion, the manifestation of God, Baha'u'llah, has actually written his will and testament, in which he named his successor, Abdul Baha. That was his eldest son, and he was appointed as the only interpreter as well as the center of the covenant. Now, Abdul Baha himself, before passing, he wrote his will and testament, in which he named his grandson, Shoghi Effendi, as the interpreter and the guardian of the Baha'i faith, to which all the Baha'is of the world should turn. And 5.5 years after Shoghi Effendi died in 1957, the Universal House of Justice was elected by all the Baha'is of the world, and this is the supreme governing body of the Baha'i world. And so even though the faith now is about over 160 years young, it has remained unified.
Okay. So there are not different sects and things of Baha'i.
Right.
Correct.
This is what has preserved it, this power of the covenant.
Okay.
That as a Baha'i, you have to be firm in that covenant. That means you believe in the Bab, the Forerunner, Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, you follow the guidance of Shoghi Effendi, and now the guidance of the Universal House of Justice.
All right, and just to clarify now, the Bab is the forerunner.
Yes.
Okay.
Occupies a very similar position to John the Baptist.
Okay.
He came to announce the imminent coming and told the people, prepare yourselves, make your hearts pure, so that you're able to recognize him when he comes.
All right. Okay, now to a social question. The Baha'i faith views marriage as being between a man and a woman. And so where does that leave gay and lesbian Baha'is? How are they treated within the faith?
With the same love that anyone else is treated. It doesn't, the fact that someone may not be doing something physically, abiding by a physical law, does not change their spiritual station in the eyes of Baha'is. But it doesn't change the fact that this is a law of Baha'u'llah. Sometimes, as a youth, for instance, growing up and knowing that Baha'u'llah has said that you are not allowed to have alcohol, I may think in my mind, well, I don't agree with this, you know, but my love for Baha'u'llah taught me that I should still abide by it, and the wisdom will be made clear to me later. And so every person who comes into the faith may find something that is challenging in terms of the laws. And for people who are, for instance, homosexuals, they may find that this law is challenging. I can read you what the House of Justice said about that. The Baha'i teachings on sexual morality center on marriage and the family as the bedrock of the whole structure of human society, and are designed to protect and strengthen the divine institution. Thus, Baha'i law restricts permissible sexual intercourse to that between a man and a woman to whom he is married. Thus, it should not be so much a matter of whether a practicing homosexual can be a Baha'i, as whether, having become a Baha'i, the homosexual can overcome his problem through knowledge of the teachings and reliance on Baha'u'llah. But, and throughout, I've been a Baha'i, as I mentioned, all my life, and so I've had friends, you know, in the community who have dealt with this issue, and there is no difference in how you respond to them.
Okay. All right. I saw something interesting in doing some research for this interview. Is it true that Baha'is have advocated a single global language?
Yes. And there is a wonderful purpose and reason for that. And again, if I may read one of actually Baha'u'llah's
that's one of his teachings, his main teachings.
Excerpt, yes. He says, the day is approaching when all the peoples of the world will have adopted one universal language and one common script. When this is achieved, in whatsoever city a man may journey, it shall be as if he were entering his own home. These things are obligatory and absolutely essential. It is incumbent upon every man of insight and understanding to strive to translate that which has been written into reality and action.
All right. Now, I've read that among some Baha'is, Esperanto is somewhat popular. Saluton. And,
You know that, yes?
And so, you know, you could say, you know, because that is one of the artificial languages that has had the most success.
Yes.
And there are a number of others, but are there other languages that have been proposed?
Well, he actually has said that all the leaders and ministers of the world should get together and either choose one of the existing languages or create a new one. It doesn't matter which language it is, as long as it is one that would allow the whole of humanity to be united, because if you communicate, then a lot of the misunderstandings we're having will no longer be there.
Okay. Well, just kind of a speculative question. Why do you think it is so difficult to implement a global language?
Well, my feeling right now is that whether we have followed yet, the humanity as a whole is not aware of Baha'u'llah, and yet a lot of the principles that he enunciated, you know, more than 100 years ago are being taken one by one almost as the signs of advancing civilization. And you might want to...
Yeah, one of the reasons I think is the fact that we still have a great deal of prejudice. that is really, it's a torment and an impediment to establishing unity in the world. People are prejudiced in the sense that they maybe have an overdeveloped sense of nationality or an overdeveloped sense of ethnicity. And this attachment to these things, I think, may be a great barrier. But it's funny, I was thinking to myself, I'm not sure what language it's going to be. But for instance, English has become perhaps the language of economy. And because it's the language of business, it has been used, and most countries around the world have some level of skills in English. And I think it's maybe an infant step, a baby step, that we can see that, hey, this could work. And I think over time, probably the world will accept this principle long before they accept the Baha'is.
All right. Now, approximately how many Baha'i groups are active in Northwest Arkansas?
Well, we have a community in Rogers, in Springdale, in Fayetteville, also in the surrounding areas. So there are actually quite a few Baha'is here. And we also have a very large community of Marshallese Baha'is. As a matter of fact, I think that the Marshallese in Springdale are the highest in number, second only to their own country of origin.
Group of Baha'is, yeah.
Yes.
Wow, okay. I wanted to ask about if somebody made the decision that they wanted to become a Baha'i, how does that work? How do you, in a sense, convert to the Baha'i faith?
May I just mention one part of it, and that is what we were talking a little bit earlier, is that I believe that conversion is something that truly should not be, because in any kind of beliefs, but especially when it comes to the matters of the soul, because you have to, Baha'u'llah says that every human being has been created to know of himself and to recognize God. And so it is our responsibility, each as individuals, it is our relationship with God, and that is not something that somebody can put in you. It's got to be the way that you feel, and that how that, almost like a chord of a violin, is struck, in your heart, and you recognize that. And I believe that that's how one becomes anything. And as a Baha'i, really, we don't per se convert. We like people to be aware that Baha'u'llah has come. And the rest, it's up to the individual to decide what they want to know, to do with that knowledge. But
we are actually forbidden to proselytize. So, in other words, I think that coerce people either with the hope of reward or the threat of punishment. Right. This is not part of the way we teach the faith. It's more like you're presenting something. If you had your favorite meal, and you said, "Hey, would you like to try this?" It's similar to the feeling. We have something so precious and so wondrous we feel, and we'd like to present that to the world. But after that, it's not our responsibility after we present it.
Now, if somebody decides, that they want to become a Baha'i, then all they have to do actually is sign a piece of paper in which they say that they believe in the Baha'u'llah,
the administrative order, and agree to abide by the teachings of Baha'u'llah. That's it.
And if somebody decides to leave the Baha'i faith?
I just don't believe in Baha'u'llah. That's it.
That's completely
and there's no change in our relationship. That they're not exorcised from the family or booted from the community. It's just, unless they choose to do so themselves.
And just a brief question, since you had mentioned, a prohibition against proselytizing with threats or promises of reward. Does the Baha'i faith believe in something akin to heaven and hell?
It does, but not in the form of a place. As Jesus explained, that the flesh profits nothing. In other words, Abdu'l-Baha taught that during this life, the fetus is developing for 9 months inside of the mother, and it's developing its organs, its eyes, its ears, its limbs, that have absolutely no value whatsoever while they're inside of the mother. It's not until the child is born that those appendages have a function to run, to dance, to grasp, to eat, to see, hear, and smell and taste, and to use that wonderful mind. In the same way, we're supposed to be developing our spiritual eyes, our spiritual ears, and those various organs of love and trustworthiness, integrity. These things, mercy, compassion, these things have to be developed now so that when we are born into the next life, we have them. We are told in our writings that heaven is not a place but a condition of nearness to God, whereas hell is a condition of turning away from and being remote from God. And so it's not a place of torment, it's a condition.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that an atheist is in their own way in a self-made hell?
Well, I don't know that is hell for the person, but whether a person believes that God exists or not doesn't make God not exist. So that I believe too that as they go into the world of the spirit, is that a lot of the veils that now cloud our vision will suddenly be gone. Mm-hmm. And as long, I believe, as the person loves the light, they will be guided.
That's a condition of heaven, loving the light. And we believe we're on a journey. In other words, there's not those who are going to be blessed and those who are going to be tormented. Every one of us eventually winds his way to God. It's just we're on a path. We believe that this path is the easiest one. That's all.
Okay. Well, now, if someone were interested in learning more about the Baha'i faith, what would be some good resources for them to look into?
Well, it is lucky that we just really recently, I think we have our own new website, mm-hmm. and that is the www.nwabaha'i.org. And there they have, actually, I think it prompts you so that you can have a contact number for the Baha'is in Rogers. Okay. But depending on what area you live, they can guide you to where to go. The other thing is that they may also want to Google the Baha'i World Center, mm-hmm. where they will see a lot of the Baha'i faith from all over the world. And the Israelis themselves have called the Baha'i shrines and the administration there in Israel, where the Baha'i World Center is on Mount Carmel, as the eighth wonder of the world. Mm-hmm. So if they Google that, they may also find a lot of information.
Okay. And let's give that website one more time for the viewers.
www.nwabaha'i.org.
All right. Okay, well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting us. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks. All right, you've been watching the CAINE interviews. I'm Shannon CAINE, and stay tuned for more interesting programming on Channel 18, Community Access Television, Fayetteville, Arkansas. See you later.